Sometimes even a BB gun manufacturer wants to get into the more serious world of target shooting. Welcome back to Canuck Air. What I have today is a recent acquisition, a Powerline Model 717, manufactured in the USA by Daisy, which is a company we normally associate with BB guns and simpler youth-oriented things. This was intended to be a bit more of a serious target pistol, entry-level target pistol, as a matter of fact. Not a terribly expensive one back in its day. And that day was 1979 until about 2016. I found them still listed on Daisy's website up until that point. So, yeah, that's a pretty long life for any sort of product, especially in the airgun world. So, many of you may have seen these. I was certainly aware of them. I'd never had a chance to actually play around with one or shoot one, so now I have my chance. Got all the original paperwork with it, which was kind of cool. And again, knowing that the gun was made for, gosh, all those years. How many years is that? It's a long time. I was trying to figure out how old this particular one is. And, well, first tip is we have a Canadian Tire, Shepherd and Leslie, that's somewhere in Toronto, 75 cents for a package of targets, so that was a few years ago, never got opened. And we have the Daisy paperwork, instruction manual, and tells you how to use the darn thing, and even how to shoot it. Shooting guide. And this fella here, yeah, that's fairly dated-looking attire. So I'm assuming at some point Daisy would have updated this instruction manual. So this looks pretty old, and there's no date or anything I can find on it here, but we have in Canada Victor Recreation Products Limited, which is also marked on the box, and from what I could find, that name disappeared in 1979. December 31st, 1979, this company was amalgamated with something else. So that would suggest this is a first-year production Model 717. Another interesting little clue here is the little hang tag. Lists 880, 922, 917. These are guns that came out in 1979-ish, and somebody has penned in 722 and 717. So it looks like they didn't actually have available the correct hang tag for this gun. So, yeah. At some point they must have obviously reprinted these and made them available for this gun. So this could very well be a 1979 first year of production of the Model 717. So that's interesting. I wasn't sure when I was getting it as to whether I was getting a gun made in the 2000s or 1990s, 1980s. I did not expect it to be 1979. So what is a Daisy Powerline 717? It is a single-stroke pneumatic air pistol, which means it's not powered by a spring. It's not a multi-pump, like this one here, the Crosman 1322, which is about the same length as that. This is a multi-pump gun. These just use one single stroke to generate enough pressure to fire the pellet. This type of power plant was introduced in 1967 by Walther, so only about dozen years before this one was made. The power plant was brand spanking new, and its goal was to create a recoilless air pistol without the complicated mechanisms you'd have in, say, a recoilless air pistol like this Diana-made, Winchester branded, but Diana-made recoilless pistol with two pistons. One goes forward, one goes backwards. They counterbalance each other one out. I have a video on that one, and this is a brilliant air pistol, absolutely bonkers complicated, but just absolutely lovely thing to shoot. Downside of it is a lot of the weight is back here and not a lot of muzzle weight, which I would prefer for stability when shooting target pistol. But very lovely thing. But this has no such mechanical system. It just simply you use one stroke to compress the piston, pushes the air in, and holds it there until you shoot, which is different than a multi-pump gun where you're putting little puffs of air into a reservoir which has its own valve system. So this is simpler and also presumably more consistent, because it became the darling of the competitive shooting world for quite a few years there until the CO2 guns kind of took over. This still requires some effort to cock it, and during a long day of competitive shooting, if you've feel a bit tired compressing your gun, you may end up just not holding quite as steady as you did at the beginning of the day. If you've got a shooting coach to run over and top up your CO2 tank for you, then yeah, you have a little bit less fatigue, I guess. This gun is as I said, the entry-level model. There was the 722 and 22 caliber. That model didn't last nearly as long. That was only around for maybe 5 years or something like that. Just because 22, heavier pellet, these aren't terribly powerful pistols, and the velocity would have been a little bit disappointing, I think, out of the 22 caliber version. This one here is supposed to do about 360 feet per second, according to all the literature. I've already tested this one and got about 370s with some pellets, so it's performing actually really quite well. I'm still going to pull it apart and lubricate all the various pieces that need to be done. I'm also going to adjust this lever, because apparently this lever here is supposed to, according to the instruction manual, show a bit of resistance, and it's showing it around about there, and it's maybe a little bit closer to the edge. It should be a little larger gap there as it starts to tighten up. So that is adjustable through this little mechanism right here, apparently. So I love how the instruction manual is not afraid to tell you how to adjust this thing. And actually, really kind of bizarre, it actually tells you, for best accuracy, use Daisy superior match grade pellets. Okay, fair enough. All manufacturers seem to always promote their own pellets, but the barrel pellet compatibility can be checked by measuring the barrel inside diameter and comparing with the pellet head diameter. The pellet head should be approximately 0.002 to 0.004 inch larger than the barrel. Really, they're telling you to slug your barrel, measure your pellet, and then use pellets that are 2 to 4 thousandths fatter than that. That's a pretty serious kind of set of instructions. Clearly, this was designed to be, owned by somebody who understood such things and maybe even owned a micrometer. So, pretty cool. There were other versions of this gun. So this is the entry-level model. They brought out, I think in 1981, the 777. That had some upgrades to it. Most obvious one was it had a stippled walnut wraparound grips with a sort of a flare on the bottom as a palm rest. People complained those grips were a bit chunky, but the idea was you were supposed to actually carve them down to suit your hand better. But that was the 777, which came with a more adjustable trigger. The sights were apparently a little bit better, a bit of an upgrade. These are actually a plastic molded sight, little micrometer adjustment marks set in them, but clearly the 777 had metal sights and I think a metal trigger as well. So that was presumably to aid in shooting, and of course it had supposedly a more accurate barrel. This is a Daisy manufactured barrel supposedly, and the 777 had a Lothar Walther imported barrel put in those guns. Later on, after the 777 disappeared, the 747 was the higher end model, the upgrade model from this. Still had the plastic grips on it. Did apparently have the adjustable trigger and the Walther barrel. So that was the fancier model for quite a number of years, and the two of them survived in the catalog right until 2016 when they disappeared in the 2017. So I was always sort of aware of these guns. I had seen them in the stores. I never had a chance to properly play with one. So this is now my chance. Reading up on them, one of the complaints about it is that it's considered to be rather heavy. Yes, I like a heavy, front-heavy target gun for sure. This isn't my first single-stroke pneumatic pistol. I did have a Gamma Compact some years ago, and I parted ways with it. It's very few guns I actually trade away, but that one I did because I just found it too light. It was all basically a plastic manufacturer with the metal piston parts inside it, of course. But the rear sights were plastic. The trigger was plastic. The housing was plastic. The grip was plastic. It did have stippled walnut grips with a palm shelf on it, and it was seriously accurate. I just had a hard time holding it steady because it was just a little bit too lightweight for my personal taste. So that one, I sad to say, is gone, but I like the idea of this one. I do have another single-stroke pneumatic gun in my collection, which I bought this one some years ago. During the COVID shutdown, I noticed on the Stoger Canada site, they were selling these. This is the XP4. They were selling these for like $69, supposedly open box. And, well, I ordered one because it was $69 with free shipping as well, for that matter. Anyway, when I got it, of course, I discovered, figured out it was very much similar to the Gamma Compact. You pull it open like so, put the pellet right in there, close it up. Takes a bit of effort to close it, and it fires. This one does have an automatic safety. Every time you open and close it, the safety automatically kicks in. But all plastic construction, but yeah, pretty decent. It doesn't pretend to be a serious match pistol by any means. The fiber optic sights are a little annoying, a little bit fuzzy to my eyesight, but again, for plinking cans outdoors, it's probably just fine. The rails here, it looks like you could put a scope or something like that on top of there, but you still have to have somewhere to press hard when you're closing it up. But anyway, I rather like this gun. It is suspiciously similar to the Beeman P17, which is again another gun that everybody says everybody should buy one because they're just loads of fun and inexpensive. So this is good. What I will do is I'll probably compare this to my Daisy 717, and at some point I'm going to pull this apart, clean it, lubricate it, and see if it does any better or worse when I get it back together again. And then we'll take it out and see how it shoots. Looking forward to that. So the saga of our Daisy Powerline continues a little bit. I was going to put it across the chronograph and just see what kind of results we were getting. I did some initial tests on it, and yeah, and it was running about the 370s, 380s. I was going to put that across the chronograph just to double check that. But I thought first I might take it out. I had an opportunity to shoot outdoors a little bit, plink at some tin cans, so I took it out and got about 12 shots out of it. Yep, a dozen shots, I think, and all of a sudden this happened. You can now cock the gun, as you normally would, and it's leaking out. You can hear it actually hiss out there, so something has gone amiss. It's an old gun, to be expected, but still kind of a little annoying. I was all set to take it apart anyway, so but now I really have to. So this is going to come apart, and I'm going to find out where it's leaking. There are 4 O-rings in here. I think there's 4, and there's also a blow-off valve mechanism. So maybe it's just the valve mechanism isn't properly resetting when you go to cock it. Hopefully that's all it is. O-rings, well, we can replace those too if that's required. So anyway, we're going to be pulling it apart and see what we can find out. Disassembly is pretty straightforward on this. There's a couple of parts that are a bit stuck because they've been in there for so long that it took me a little while to figure out how to get them out of the way and move on to the next step. Side plates come off, and our trigger group just drops out, no problem at all. It took me a while to figure out how to get this out of the out of the side plate there, but I eventually did. It's just a little bit of a geometry problem. Just have to wriggle it in just the right direction. This had some sticky parts here. When I finally got them out of the way, I was able to get the piston, the piston out of the way. I was a little stuck in there, but a few taps just came out easy enough. The bore looks good, but I did end up cleaning it. Now, my first thought was this valve mechanism was where the trouble was, but when I got it out, eventually I could figure out that it still looked in pretty good condition. If that valve seat goes bad, then you're in a lot of trouble, because those parts are very hard to find these days. Well, I've had a chance to look over the disassembled parts of this Daisy 717, and the news isn't all bad. Yes, I managed to lose the ball bearing out of the safety click, but I wasn't able to find it. It landed somewhere, but anyway, I've got a replacement. That'll be fine, just as long as I don't lose that one. The O-rings, I believe the two that one goes. This is the rear end of the barrel assembly, and the valve here, or at least this is the valve here. There's an O-ring on here, and this is the actual valve seat. I believe those are both in pretty good condition, but I do have a replacement O-ring for it, which I put on there, so that one can go in the bin. This one here, there's an O-ring there, and these two parts compress together when you cock the gun. You essentially force air into this tight little space right here. It ends up highly compressed, and when you fire the gun, this little valve pops open, lets the air shoot from release down this port in here, up into here, and down the barrel. So pretty straightforward and simple. I rather like that. This is adjustable here. You put a screwdriver in this little slot to torque this back and forth to adjust the range on that piston. That's something we need to set up later. So that'll be fine. Everything looks good, except the O-rings, I believe, are just a little bit hardened and flattened, and all of a sudden just started to leak, I believe, right past this one here. So the only trouble is that despite the fact that I've got several kits of assorted O-rings, several kits of these assorted O-rings, I got metric sizes, I got SAE sizes, none of them match these two here. I'm guessing what Daisy did was used a 1/8 inch thickness on the O-ring here. And the O-rings I've got there, 1/8 inch is pretty much 3 millimeters. I've got some that measure 3.1 millimeters, but they're in the larger sizes. The ones that are in this size measure about 2.4 millimeters, or whatever that is in the SAE size. And yeah, that's not going to work. Fortunately, though, some time ago I ordered these in to repair a CO2 powered camera. And yeah, I said camera. And first I thought these would just be too small, but no, this 20 millimeter by 3 millimeter, once that's stretched around there, seems to form a pretty tight fit. So much better than the other ones do, that's for sure. I tried some of the thinner ones in there, and they just leak straight through. So this compression tube appears to be brass, painted on the outside, but I'll give that a clean and polish before I put everything back in again. So there's some O-ring residue in there for sure. Get that all cleaned out. The this is the sear and trigger assembly, and I think it's rather clever actually. When you open the gun up to put a pellet in, it pushes this back to set it. You can't pull the trigger until you push the guide forward, and it pushes that forward there, and there we go. This little fork here is what snaps down violently and yanks open this valve. It sits just around there like that. So pretty spiffy. I like it. The other issue I've got, I'm not quite sure what I do with this, is this little piece of plastic fell out, and this is the, let's see, where is it? Yeah, no, let's try this side. This is part of this is the rear sight, which sits in here like this, and this little piece right there should be attached like so, and is broken off. I'm guessing this just is provide a little bit of tension to, when the sight slides up and down, stop the sight from rattling around, which it does rattle around. So yeah, there's definitely that going on. I'll see if I can fix this. A little dab of cyanoacrylate glue might work, but I might just end up packing it with epoxy just to plump it up a little bit. That may not be any good, but we'll see what we can do. When it comes to modifications or souping up this gun, what is there to be done? Well, I came across this article online, maybe you'll be able to find it, written by Don Nygaard long time ago, back when these guns were brand spanking new. And he says they cost like $40 back in those days. He had some suggestions on how to tune them up for even better accuracy. And he was able to put it up against his Finework bow recoilless guns and found that these little things did just as well. So, or were certainly competitive and certainly a bargain for a beginning shooter. So his suggestions are to modify the trigger for a more precise pull, a little less sear engagement. He advocates drilling a hole up through here someplace to go right up against the pivot point on where the trigger. So you basically pre-pull the sear engagement a little bit. Yeah, I could see where that would be kind of handy. And he also suggests drilling down through here, I think, to put a little over travel stop in there so the trigger doesn't go move quite as far after you've fired. And his other thing was to replace the rear sight. Let me see, I've got one right here somewhere. Yeah, I've got some here. Actually, I didn't realize that these were almost identical, except one's got a white line on the back. These are millet sights, and they're high quality, solid steel. And he suggested they were a much better option than this plastic thing, which never has quite as sharp a crisp an edge on it, and it's not quite as matte black either, for that matter. So he suggested something like this to be mounted in the place of this, and he had a little diagram for a block to put in there. I'm not quite entirely sure how he proposed that work, but anyway, somehow you had to figure out how to put this in the place of that, so you needed some sort of a adapter block that this would fit into, or some other sight that would be better than this one anyway. That's all very well and good, and however, his proposals were done before the when the 717 was a brand new model, and before the 747 or 777 showed up on the scene. So those improvements kind of came with the later guns and made his recommendations kind of a moot point, because you just buy the better gun and then off you went. So, but those are possibilities. I could do those adjustments to this gun, but I don't know that I want to. This is a fairly original condition 717 with its original box, original papers, not too much wear and tear on it, aside from a couple of small little problems here and there. I think for the time being, I'll just keep it original. Step number one is to get it going again, so hopefully this seal replacement will sort that out, so we'll go from there. But yeah, these would be really cool. One of these anyway, but fair bit of work to do. However, that would be reversible. You could always put the original sight back into it. But once you've drilled a hole in the frame, and boy, you really got to get that right. That hole has to go in perfect alignment with that sear surface there. So if you don't get it right, if you drill it too far forward or back, it's going to miss your engagement surface. So yeah, yeah, these don't grow on trees anymore, so I don't know. I'll be getting into doing that. The trigger's not terrible. It when I was shooting it the other day outdoors, it feels great when you're just test firing it or over the chronograph. But when you are trying to line the sights up on a target, you can definitely feel a little more grit, a little more pressure there, and it's not a match grade trigger, but it's better than most for sure. Because again, it's not a big spring piston gun. It isn't as good as the trigger on my Diana 6, which is a Winchester 363, but it's not bad, and I can see where you could get some pretty good scores with this gun. So next step, let's clean everything up, put the new seals in, get it back together again, and see if we've got a working gun. Oh yes, one last thing before I put it back together again. You may have noticed when I pulled it apart, there was a foam wiper wrapped around here, which I'm gather is to just simply keep a reservoir of lubricating oil wiping up and down the cylinder. That disintegrated into little particles of foam dust that went everywhere. Completely useless. So my hope is to replace it with something useful. This is genuine wool felt, so if I maybe cut a strip out of this and wrap it around there, looks like I'll probably only need one thickness, hopefully, and then put that in and lube it up, and hopefully that'll make a good replacement. I can't think what else to use. I think you can buy foam replacement wipers and things like that, but the reseal kits for these guns don't include that. So, but clearly that is something that just simply deteriorates with time. So anyway, we'll get that sorted out too. A little bit of silicone grease on these O-rings, and they'll do just fine, I think. A little bit of silicone lube for the valve, which I will take out again later, but anyway, for the moment I'm putting it back in again. And here I'm doing a bit of a test fit of some of that felt gasket material. And here the pieces can be a little too short and a little too fat, so cut a new one. I got lots of it. Just putting a bit of contact cement on there to hold the pad in place so it doesn't fall out anywhere when I'm putting it in the gun. And a little bit of 5-minute epoxy here to patch the gap in the rear sight, that little springy part that's supposed to be springy. I'm pretty sure that if I put it back in like this, just held with a bit of dab of cyanoacrylate glue, it'll just snap right off again. So I'm just filling in the gap with epoxy, and that should be still springy enough for it to work. And here I am taking that valve back out again, because I didn't want it in there when I was cleaning the barrel. So I soaked my little felt gasket now in some silicone oil, and I put some more in again later once it absorbed in a bit more. And that should go into the tube quite nicely. Yeah, I discovered you can put this whole thing back together again without the barrel. Gently poking the O-ring in just to make sure it gets into the tube without getting any nicks or scratches in it. And it all goes in. Here's a close-up of the glue job I did on the sight. And again, it seemed to work just fine. The sight went in there, it didn't rattle as much as it did before. You can see little fine gradations on the back of the sight too for the micrometer adjustment. And there's the ball bearing that I put into the safety. And it's just dying to pop right back out again, but I got all the pieces back in. So before we do any chronographing, let's test the trigger pull on this thing, see how it's actually doing. Okay, so you don't have to put a pellet in it because it's a pneumatic gun. Doesn't care whether there's a pellet in it or not. No springs to damage. Okay, how do we do this? Let's see if we can show it for the camera properly. Okay. One kilo, 650 grams. Okay, I guess I've got a metric right now. Oops. All right. Cock it first. Try again. 1.62. And let's try one more. 1.41. Okay. So that gives us a high of 1.65 kilos, low of 1.41. We knew that. Which gives us an average of 1.56 kilos. Okay, units. That's 3 pounds, 7.1 ounces. So it's a fairly hefty trigger pull, a little heavier than I thought it would be, but decently consistent, so there we go. And while we have it here, why don't we just compare it to our Stoeger XP4, since it's also our single-stroke pneumatic, more recent design. Okay. 1 pound, 0.1 ounces. .4 ounces. And 15.0 ounces. So that would be the high of 1.01 and a low of 12.4 ounces. In metric, that's 450 grams down to 350 grams. So, and that would be average-wise 410 grams in metric, 14.5 ounces. But it varies a little bit more than I expected. So, yeah, not bad. Okay, let's try a few shots across the chronograph with this beast. Just going to use the Kangwon training pellets here. They seem to do a pretty good job, decently consistent, so that's what I tested with it earlier, so when it was working. Okay, safety's off. Let's see. $3.75. $3.88. $3.89. $3.92. So it's picking up just a little bit. It is supposed to shoot in the 380s, something like that. That's what the specification said. And these pellets are, I think, just a tad heavier than average. Not that probably affects it too much. $3.95. So that's 5 shots, and we'll see how that all kind of pans out. Next step, we will take it to the range and see if we can shoot it straight. So what I'm going to try the Daisy with today is 5 different pellets. These are all wad cutters. These are the QIS Kangwon training grade, and these are the fancier match grade ones. Look pretty much the same thing, but supposedly a tighter tolerance pellet. We'll see if it does any differently. I don't know that my skills are going to make a difference. But some pellets will fit the bore better than others, I suppose. So we've got the H&N Finale Match high-speed pellets. Don't know if they make those anymore. I know that these RWS ones, the CO2 targets, I think these are discontinued now, but picked up a couple of boxes of those at one point. And these are the RWS Meisterkugel, the lighter ones, 7.7 grains. These ones are a little heavier, so yeah, these should be a better fit. I've got the heavier grade Meisterkugelns at home, but I'm going to try these ones out today. Let's give them a shot. I start out by bench resting the gun and at the 10-meter range, just to sight it in to figure out, just to get fairly close to the bullseye. Just start out with the training pellets at first. Then, of course, because this is a, target pistol intended for 10-meter use, and understanding the trigger and the sights and everything all comes down to shooting it offhand like this. This group was with the RWS Meisterkugels. I ended up shooting 6 shots. For some reason I miscounted my pellets. The group was fairly large, and I don't think it's any inaccuracy in the gun or the pellet, just trying to get used to that trigger. I moved on to the RWS CO2 pellets, and these were grouping just a little bit better. So again, I'm not reading too much into the into the performance of these different pellets in the gun. I just think I'm just learning my way around this. At the moment it's shooting a little bit low and to the left, but that isn't always the case. I do think this ended up being one of the better groups that I shot with it, actually. Yeah, this group spread out quite a bit. These are the good quality H&N Finale Match high-speed pellets, but for some reason I ended up throwing them a little bit crossways across the target, 56 millimeters from side to side. And that could just be the optics of shooting at the target on the edge of the paper as opposed to the targets in the middle. It, you know, plays tricks with your eyes a little bit. But I will have to agree that trigger pull is surprisingly more difficult than it feels when you're at the bench. I did try the QIS match grade pellets here, and yeah, I did a little bit better than the H&Ns, but not as good as some of the others. So again, I don't think I'm learning much about pellets or anything. I'm just trying to figure my way around the gun. And these are all shot at, this video is being played back at 3 times speed, so no, I'm not shooting this quickly. Those 4 clustered pretty well, but that one, there's always one flyer, isn't there? I did shoot 2 shots, two groups of 5. I did shoot 2 groups of 5 at this bottom corner target with the Stoger pistol and missed all 10 shots, both offhand and bench rested. So the sights are obviously further off than I thought they were. So I didn't have time to sight that gun back in again. So I just picked up the Diana again, or I picked up the Daisy again, and just bench rested these QIS training pellets just to assure myself that it was shooting half decently. So conclusions about the Daisy 717. Yeah, I think it's a fairly impressive air pistol. It is big. It isn't the kind of thing you can lug around easy on the trail. It's fairly wide with that side lever on it, but that's not what it was for, obviously. This was intended to be a sort of a low-cost training type air pistol capable of shooting in match competition, I suppose, especially for junior ranks and things like that. So yeah, I think there's a good reason why Daisy had a good long run of success with this particular model. And the fancier ones that came after the 747 and 777 would have stolen some of its thunder, but yeah, this basic 717 certainly has the chops to shoot fairly well. Yes, I think a custom set of wooden grips would be something that a competitor would want. Those trigger adjustments also would be, yeah, I could see where they would be handy. I don't know if I'll be doing that to this gun, but I can see where somebody would want to. But anyway, thanks for watching. Canuck Air will return. Consider subscribing.